This is the Book Deal Podcast,
where you will discover the inspiring stories behind your favourite books.
We interview seasoned and debut authors, as well as publishing industry professionals, to bring you the best tips and advice on how to get that elusive book deal.
So no matter what stage of writing you're at, we've got you covered. I'm Tina Strawn.
I'm Madeleine Cleary.
And I'm Natasha Rye.
And join us as we pull back the curtain of published authors,
one deal at a time. The Book Deal Podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on, and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging.
Welcome everybody to this very special episode of the Book Deal Podcast, where we have not one but three guests on the show today. So it could go completely pear-shaped, but we'll see how we go because I'm sure we have lots to share, and it's going to be lots of fun. So because this week's ep is a middle grade debut author special, so I'm really excited to introduce Lucie Stevens.
Hi, so excited to be here.
So excited to have you. And Shara Curlett.
Hi, thank you so much for having me away from New Zealand.
Anytime. And Sandy Bigna.
Hi, lovely to be here.
And you're right, we are from all over Australia at the moment. Shara, you're normally in New Zealand, but you're in our wonderful land at the moment. So can you tell us, where are you at the moment, Shara? Are you still in Brisbane?
Yes, yeah, I've just been at the conference for CYA or CIA, and I'm still at the hotel, and then I fly out to Sydney this afternoon. So
yeah, and you have to leave very shortly. So and then you'll be in Sydney for a bit, and then popping home, which is very exciting. And Sandy, where are you?
So I'm in Canberra, which is freezing.
Yeah, right.
So jealous of everyone who lives up north. It's very cold.
It is pretty sunny and lovely up here in Queensland on the Gold Coast. And Lucie, where are you?
I'm in Sydney, and it's a beautiful sunny winter day here, actually the perfect kind of temperature for me. I love cold but sunny. That's my favorite. So I'm very happy with the weather at the moment.
Awesome. Okay, so this is going to be a really exciting episode for all our listeners, especially those that are writing middle grade or writing any kind of kidlit and maybe wanting to venture into middle grade and wanting to know, how to get published and how to write, because you're all actually writing quite different genres, don't you, and different styles. So that's really interesting and something I'd love to chat to you about. But first off, ladies, congratulations on your debut books releasing into the world this year. It's very exciting. We always love to ask authors and put them on the spot for their one-liners or their pitches for their books, because it's something that we all have to learn how to do as aspiring authors and debut authors, how to give that cracking one-liner or your pitch, elevator pitch. So I am going to put you on the spot and start with you first, Lucie. You're quite familiar with the publishing industry as well as an editor and a freelance writer in the past, aren't you? But this is your first published novel.
I am.
Yeah.
This is my first published novel. So actually, I'm a bit cheeky. I steal my one-liner from James Foley, who is one of my wonderful endorsers. And I really think he said it best. He said that my novel is Mary Poppins by way of Tim Burton, which I think actually articulates it beautifully. So thank you, James Foley. But yeah, I could tell you a little bit more about the story if you'd like, but that's my one-liner.
Yeah, it's a great one-liner. Please tell us more.
So R.I.P. Nanny Tobbins is a spooky middle grade adventure fantasy story set in London in 1851. And it's about a girl called Albertine whose much beloved governess, Nanny Tobbins, dies unexpectedly in a horse riding accident. But she's very, very dedicated to her job, so she returns to the nursery each night at midnight to continue her duties. But unfortunately, having a ghost for a governess causes all kinds of chaos in the household, and none of the grown-ups believe Albertine when she says Nanny Tobbins has returned. So she realizes fairly quickly that if she doesn't find a way to lay the ghost of her governess to rest, some terrible consequences are coming her way.
It's such an amazing book, Lucie, and such a unique plot, isn't it? A unique idea. And I love it. I love what you said about stealing the blurb or the one-liner from someone else. Because yes, I'm the same. Since my book's been out and other people have reviewed it, I'm like, wow, you actually made that sound so much better. So maybe
Yeah,
I'll
it makes
start
it easier.
Yeah, maybe I'll start stealing theirs as well. But congratulations. And Sandy, you've been involved in the kidlit world for a while now too, haven't you, as a blogger of Australian kidlit and a big supporter of Australian kidlit.
Yeah.
Can you introduce us to your debut novel?
Yeah, so as you said, I've been reviewing kids' books on Instagram for a while, and my debut novel is a verse novel, and it's about a girl called Bones. She's 11 years old, also slightly spooky. Bones is a bit lonely, and she likes to collect animal bones and other discarded treasures, and she sketches them. And then one day she accidentally brings to life the skeleton of a small bird. But as it turns out, bird doesn't actually want to be resurrected, and he asks Bones to reverse the accidental curse that she's put on him. So Bones needs to figure out the secrets of the magic, and then also see if she can summon up the courage to say goodbye. So yeah, I think like Lucie's book, there's a little bit quirky, a little bit spooky, and there's sort of themes of friendship and hope as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're right. It's another unique storyline that I love. And it's verse novel.
Yeah, so it's written in verse. Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about verse novel, or for people who don't understand what verse novel is, or maybe wanting to write in that?
Yeah, so verse novels, they follow a standard narrative arc. So they've got the same sort of plot and characters, but it's just written in verse instead of your standard narrative prose. So, I think a lot of people think it's like poetry and it rhymes and that they're sort of standalone verses, and they are standalone verses, but they do follow that sort of standard narrative arc as well. And I suppose they're a bit more succinct. You've really got to get to the heart of the story and choose your words very carefully. So there's lots of white space around the words, and really good for reluctant readers.
Yeah. And how many words normally is a middle grade verse? Is there rules around that like there is with
there
other
are,
stuff?
because when I first wrote it, it was way too long. It was about 33,000 words. And then I was encouraged to cut about 15,000 words. So got it down to about 22,000 words. So ideally between 20 and 22,000 words, which is an advantage, right? Because they're shorter to write. Highly recommend it.
But there's lots of illustrations in yours too, isn't there?
There are some beautiful illustrations by Tam Tiao. Yeah, gorgeous line drawings, which takes up a bit of space as well in the book. So it looks quite a thick book, but it's actually very quick to read.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. So, Shara, can you please give us your one-liner and your pitch and tell us a little bit about your debut book?
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Tina. It's so great being on the podcast. I've listened to it for a very long time, ever since you started, and you and Madeleine are doing a wonderful job. So Welcome to Miracle is about an 11-year-old girl who is cursed by chaos and can never go to a magical island nearby that basically gives visitors magic for 24 hours. So when she's invited to go, she suspects that there is more to it. So it's basically a supercharged magical adventure. It's fast paced, and the inspiration came from what if Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was a magical island instead?
Love that. That's so good. Great like a great comp title as well, which is really important. And I just love that cursed by chaos thing. It's great. Such a good hook.
Yeah.
And an incredible book as well. So here on the Book Deal podcast, we love hearing, well, mostly I love hearing about publication journeys. This is one of the reasons why we started the podcast, because I just can't get enough of hearing publication journeys, because they're so different. Everybody has a completely different story. They're very unique, and it's important for people who are listening to the pod, because we have lots of listeners who are aspiring authors, and I just really want to know how to get there, and how do I get my books published, and what are the steps. And I guess there's a few things that are common for everybody, and I mean getting actually putting your work out there is probably the number one step that we all take, but everybody it's just a different path, and we just have to forge our own pathway forward. So, but before I get into that, can someone just explain for people who are listening what middle grade is? Some sort of, some rules around that, because some people don't understand what middle grade is. Who wants to jump in?
I feel like Sandy would probably be the best person to represent the kidlit community here, if you're okay with that, Sandy.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think the issue with middle grade is I think there's lower middle grade and upper middle grade. So the general rule is sort of between, I'd say, 8 to 12 years old, categorised as middle grade. But I think within that space, there's also your lower middle grade, sort of maybe for your 8 to 9-year-olds or 8 to 10-year-olds. And then you've got your upper middle grade, which could actually extend up to 13 years old as well. So, but I think generally speaking, I'm sitting on the shelves, it would be 8 to 12, I think. Does everyone think that sounds accurate?
Yeah, it's usually what they market it as, isn't it? And I mean, but also regardless of what they market it as, it's what the reader feels comfortable reading, or what the parent who's buying the book feels is suitable for their child, right? So they could be young and reading up just because they're very clever at it, but also older kids can be reading middle grade because that's the level that they're at and that's what they're comfortable with, and it doesn't matter as long as they're reading, isn't it? And what about the length? Shara, do you have some comments on like what the length of what a middle grade book usually is? And it sometimes depends on genre, doesn't it?
It does, and I think it's in flux at the moment. I think because readers, it's hard to grab their attention, and if it's not fast paced, it's easy to lose them. So I think, as a standard, 40 to 50,000 words, 60,000 words at the max. I write fantasy, which has a little bit more leeway. In saying that, I can see publishers moving towards the 20,000 middle grade space, because all we want to do is get kids reading. And if long books are not capturing all of them, perhaps shorter books will. I think there's room to be creative, I personally think. But yeah, I'd say 50,000 is the standard, but I think watch the space.
Yeah. And what about the content, Lucie? Have you found that there's any rules sort of around like character ages and what can and can't be written into a middle grade?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think most of the middle grade books are about friendship, family, courage, resilience, these kinds of themes, which personally I think are universal themes that are applicable to everybody at every age. And I think that's why a lot of older readers and adults also can enjoy middle grade fiction, because these are resonant themes through our whole journey of life, right? So, and age-wise, so I did a master's in writing for children and young adults over in Manchester a few years ago, and they told us that the rule of thumb was that your protagonist should be ideally 2 years older than your intended reader. And that's actually a rule that I have defied in my novel for strategic reasons, but that's what we were taught. But I think, there's always exceptions to the rule. I think what's important is if it's done deliberately, not just sort of random. Like, I think if you want to defy a convention, you have to have a reason behind it. But yeah, I think generally it's good if kids are reading about a character that's a little bit older than them, so it's a little bit sort of aspirational in a way.
Yeah, and also I think sometimes there's and not really any romance in middle grade, is there? Like, you tend to stay away from that. And yeah, like you said, there's still that sort of message at the core, but you don't want to be obvious about it at all. Like, I think in junior fiction you can be a little bit more straightforward with your message at the end, that the characters learned their lesson and things like that. But in middle grade, like, you just can't be obvious with that. I think, hey, you've got to sort of weave it in there a little bit better, but still have it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, kids don't like being taught, especially not through their books, right? Okay, cool. All right, so publication journeys. Sandy, I'm going to start with you. Can you please tell us even back from when you first started writing, how did you start writing, and what started you on that journey? And then how did you actually get to signing on the dotted line of that Elusive book deal?
Yeah, well, it goes way back for me because I was that kid that sort of grew up reading and writing from a really early age. And I was really lucky to be surrounded by books and reading. My siblings wrote and we read our stories aloud to each other. So when I was about 6, I think I thought I'd become a published author, probably by the ripe old age of 18. Sadly, that did not happen. The pathway to publication was a lot bumpier and a lot longer than that. Along the way, I had lots of sort of writing highs and lows. I went on to study some creative writing at University of Canberra. And then I went on to work as a children's librarian for a while. And that actually reignited my love of children's books. And I sort of thought, yeah, I actually wouldn't mind. You know, I was writing at university, I think I was writing more sort of literary fiction and stories for adults, mostly short stories. And then I, reading the books to the children in the libraries, it sort of reignited my passion for children's books. So I did submit to publishers, lots of rejections. And then I think, I had 3 children sort of 2 years apart. And I think that really diverted some of my creative energy for a while. Like we can probably relate to that.
Yes.
That it just, let's face it, kind of exhausting. So I was still, attending workshops where I could, some online, some in person, and daydreaming of ideas. Then as the kids got a little bit older, that creative energy came back to me. And like I said before, I think it was about 2020 when I discovered the Bookstagram community on Instagram. And I was like, oh, here's this space where people are reviewing books, chatting about books. And I thought I could do that. I'd love to review children's books. So I set up my own platform and started connecting with other creatives. And I was meeting children's authors and illustrators. Publishers were sending me books to review. And I was, making these connections and really loving what I was doing. I was still writing, but not submitting as much. But then in 2022, I think it was, I thought, okay, now I've got to get serious. If I want to get something published myself, I've actually got to carve out the time and think of myself as a writer, not just, loved reviewing other people's books, but I really wanted to be an author myself. So that's when I sat down to start focus on writing little bones, which have been swirling around in my head in various formats over the years. But when I started writing it, it just wasn't working. It was the narrator was different to Bones. It was a girl originally who could see animal ghosts, so similar but not quite working. It wasn't a verse novel. It was just standard prose, and it just, it didn't have that magic vibe. But then at some point, this strong visual image came to me of this girl. She was dressed all in dark clothes, and she was digging down near water with a stick. And immediately I knew that this girl was lonely, that she'd lost something, and that she was digging for animal bones, which seems very random, but I think I've always had this kind of quirky obsession with, I don't know, like Halloween spooky stories. It was inevitable there was going to be some sort of talking skeleton in my first book. So once I had nailed her voice, and then the format, because her story would only be told as a verse novel. It wasn't really a conscious decision to write it as a verse novel. That's just the way it came out. That's when I was like, okay, this feels right. I had that excitement get when you feel like you've nailed it. So I'd connected with Julianne Grasso on Instagram, who hosts the Middle Grade Mavens podcast. And she was doing pitch assessments. And so I sent her my pitch and the first few pages of the manuscript. She was really enthusiastic, and she encouraged me to keep pushing through and finish it ahead of the Kidlit Vic conference, which was happening in, I think it was April 2023. So she said, just push through, get a finished manuscript. So I largely wrote the manuscript, the rest of the manuscript, over the summer of 2022, 2023, completely ignored my kids, locked myself in a room, you can entertain yourselves, and then had the manuscript written and booked an in-person assessment with Danielle Binks, who was literally my dream agent. And she got back to me before the conference and said, I really like this manuscript. Can you send me the full thing? I was trying not to get my hopes up, as you do, when you've had lots of rejections. I was like, yeah, that's, just be cool. Like, she probably just wants to, read it and give me some feedback. So went down to the conference, had a chat with Danielle, and we were just talking. She was lovely. And then halfway through, she said, yeah, you know what? I really love this manuscript and I want to offer you representation. And I was just like,
that's the dream
shocked.
Story, Sandy.
It was so unexpected.
Wow.
Because you try and keep your hopes very low.
Yeah, you do. You try and keep them, self-preservation, right? You don't want to keep getting hurt.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it sort of went from there. And then, of course, the manuscript had to go out on submission, and sort of waiting to see what publishers, if any, would get back. So again, it's keeping those hopes manageable.
Mm-hmm.
And then UQP indicated they were interested in setting up a Zoom meeting, and Kathy Valance had a chat with me and Danielle, and then not long after that she got back to Danielle and said she'd like to offer a contract and a 2-book deal with UQP. So that's basically, quite a long story, but how it came about, and then signing that contract. And it was a dream come true after the many, many, many years of rejections and putting things on hold and having kids and, feeling like it may never happen.
Yeah, no, that's such an important and incredible story. Important story, though, because your rejections can really get you down. And that's why I just love sharing these stories, because it's so important for people to hear these really great outcomes. And had you have let those rejections get you down and stop you from writing, or doubt yourself to a point that you just don't want to submit anymore, you'd never be here now with this book, which has had such amazing reviews and feedback, and it's just been incredible. Congratulations, Sandy.
Thank you.
So tell us, 2-book deal though, is the second book related to Little Bones, or?
No, so the second book will be completely different. Still, it's still trying to get the magic that I felt with Little Bones. I think it's that second book pressure that people talk about, and your headspace is still obviously with that first book.
Yeah.
I want to hear Lucie's story about this, because I know she's doing a book too, or has done. But it's completely different to book one, where there's no pressure. You're just doing it for yourself.
Yeah, you're just writing words and throwing them away and just taking your time. And
that's right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, you would know about this too, Tina. Booked, your subsequent
and 3.
books.
I know,
And 3. Oh my goodness.
It's different when there's a deadline. We could do a whole episode on second book syndrome. I'm going to call it. Right? It is, and it's across the board, and it's lots of people are chatting about it. But that's incredible, incredible story. Lucie, let's move on to you. Tell us about your story from when you first started writing and how that happened, and to signing on that dotted line.
Well, a lot of what Sandy said resonates with me too, actually. So my publication journey has also been very, very long. I've wanted to be an author specifically a novelist since I was really a very young child. I think even before I really understood what an author was, I knew I wanted to make books and write books. So I had sort of tried really hard in my younger years. Same as Sandy, thought, oh yeah, I thought, yes, definitely by the time I'm in my early 20s, I will have published a novel, but that's not how it came about. So sort of the publication journey for RIP Nanny Tobbins started with a big disappointment. I had been working on another novel as part of my dissertation for my master's program, and I had secured representation, and I'd also had a few successes that I think Sandy can also relate to. So Varuna Fellowship, I'd received an ASA mentorship to support the development, which, you know, was so exciting and very much a high and sort of a vote of confidence. So but this novel was not the first novel that I'd been through that process with. So there was one even before that that I'd also received a Varuna Fellowship for and an ASA mentorship for, and it hadn't secured publication. So when I was working on this other one as part of my dissertation, I thought, finally, this is going to happen. This is going to be the one that sort of, you know, heals all the heartbreak from the previous big disappointment and heartbreak. So anyway, my agent started shopping that one around. That one was, so this was happening in 2022. And after a couple of submissions, which were rejections, we got some feedback about it. And my agent said to me, I think we need to pull this from submissions for the moment, and you need to have a rethink about it. And I was sort of all, you know, ready to jump in. And I said to her, I know how to fix it. I know how I can change things and it'll be great. And she said, no. You need to take a break from this novel. You need to step away from it. And I thought she was going to say to me, you know, why don't you take up crocheting or something like this? And she said, I want you to go away and write me something fun. So at this point, I was devastated to have to go through this whole sort of process of rejection and heartbreak again. And I also had a very, very heavy client workload. So I work as a freelance editor. So I was working, you know, an average of 6.5 days a week. And I thought, if I don't enroll in some kind of program or structure to support my writing, I'm just not going to do it at the moment, because I was so heartbroken and feeling very sort of de-energized and not very motivated about it. But I had mentioned this idea of this ghost governess to my agent, Dean, and she said, I love it. Write that story. So I hadn't really done a lot of thinking about the story, but I enrolled in a 4-month program run by Sarah Centillas, who, if you've ever worked with her, you will be familiar with her unique brand of magic. So this great 4-month program called The Word River. And I decided that by the end of 6 months, I wanted to have a first draft of this ghost governess novel. I didn't do any planning, which is highly unusual for me. I'm not a total planner. I'm a bit of a like halfway between a planner and a pantser. But I didn't do any research, which is kind of funny because it is a historical novel. But I thought, I'm just going to sit down, smash out a first draft in 6 months and see if I can do it. And just really lean into the joy of creating, not worry about this going anywhere, just really write something for myself and have fun with it. So I did that. I managed somehow, I still don't know to this day how I managed to pull it off with the workload I had at the time, but I did end up with a first draft in that period, and I sent it to Dean, my agent, thinking she's probably, I had some concerns about it. The tone, the voice of the novel is very, very quaint, and that's for a particular reason. And without this sort of quaint voice, the whole novel really wouldn't work, because it's the point of view of the protagonist that really makes the whole story work. So I thought, this voice is not going to land with a contemporary audience. So I had very low expectations, and I didn't want to do any more work on it until Dean had looked at it. But she came back to me very quickly, and she said that she absolutely loved it and to keep going. So she gave me some notes, and I spent another sort of probably about 6 to 8 months working on it. Sent it back to her, and she said, okay, let's give this one a go. So she started sending it out. A first rejection came through. The publisher absolutely loved it, but she couldn't get it through acquisitions. So I was straight away, I was like, oh, no one's going to want this novel. People might love it, but they don't think there's a market for it. And I was very kind of like, woe is me. Then we got a second rejection, and I was like, yeah, this is, hard evidence that this novel is not going anywhere. And I'm sort of back to square one again. And then one day Dean called me, which was really unusual. Normally we only ever communicate via email. And she said, Lisa Berryman from HarperCollins wants to speak to you. And I was like, why? And she said, oh, she just wants to have a chat and get a feel for you as a person. So we lined up a call and had a lovely conversation with Lisa. Lisa is also another very wonderful, magical person. And she said to me, okay, I really like this manuscript. I'm going to share it with my editorial team, and then we're going to sort of take it from there. So her team loved it, and she then came back and said, we're now going to take it to acquisitions. But of course, after so much history of rejection, like Sandy, I just didn't want to believe that maybe this would happen this time. And so I really just kept my expectations very low. But and there was sort of a bit of a gap between hearing that and the actual meeting. And in that time, Dean had come back and said to me, they're now discussing a 2-book deal, just to let you know, make sure you have another idea up your sleeve kind of thing. And at that time, I did have another idea up my sleeve, but it was a different idea to the one that I ended up pitching to Lisa. So there is a sequel coming out for R.I.P. Nanny Tobbins. It will be coming out mid-2026. And I literally had the idea for it the day before my meeting with Lisa to pitch my idea. I was cleaning the shower. I had this amazing flash of inspiration, and I was like, oh, that's what I should be pitching. And she loved it. So there was then a sort of a period of time. So this was towards the end of 2023 now. And of course, we were falling into the holiday period at the end of the year, and things went quiet for a little while. And of course, I started to panic, thinking, okay, things have changed. It was at the time too when Target was bought by Kmart, and this had caused a little bit of instability in the market. And I thought, oh no, this is going to have ramifications. But actually what was happening was Dean was just doing a brilliant job as an agent, and negotiating some clauses in my contract to my benefit. So that's really what was happening behind the scenes while I was meanwhile panicking. And then, so I think in January 2024, I signed my 2-book deal with HarperCollins, which just blew my mind. Although it was quite funny because it was done electronically. So it was almost a little bit anticlimactic. It was just like clicking a box. It wasn't this sort of romantic notion of printing out a copy or receiving a hard copy in the mail and getting a beautiful pen and signing on the dotted line. But of course, it was still an amazing moment. But a very long lead time into publication then. And that was strategic so that I would have time to write the sequel before, get a lot of the sequel kind of written before the first one came out. So yeah, that's sort of the journey.
It's an incredible journey. It's a bit when things go quiet, it's your brain just goes to the, oh yeah, they've just decided they don't want it anymore. I'm just going to get an email any minute now saying, actually rethought that. We're taking it off the table. Look, it's probably happened before, but it's it's just where your brain goes, isn't it? But it's usually always for a good thing. I'm also with Lisa Berryman from HarperCollins. So yes, I know how exciting that is. If you get a call from Lisa, it's usually it's
a thrill.
But Lucie, congratulations on the 2-book deal. I can't wait to hear more from R.I.P. Nanny Tobbins. And I agree with you, that quaint voice though that you mentioned before, I think that's absolutely what sets it apart, and it makes it refreshing in a way. I feel like there hasn't been much like that lately, and I think that's what's been really nice about it as well, from my point of view anyway, that something different. And I loved it. It's a lovely journey.
Thanks, Tina.
And so, Shara, can you tell us a little bit about your unique journey to publication? Can you start back from when you first started writing as well?
Oh, I'd love to. I think my one isn't a typical story. a lot of people, they'll have their first child and then they'll get immersed into the picture book world, or they've wanted to do it their entire life. Um, I had no idea I wanted to do it my entire life. Basically, I just wrote all the time, but it wasn't until I had a year where I describe it as the opposite of 4 weddings and a funeral. And I had an immense amount of grief and I had no idea how to process it. I ran a business at the time, so I was just stuck into that. Um, and I just randomly started writing a novel. And in the past, I'd write a novel to help kind of process things, but I'd never finish it. I'd write like a few chapters, except for when I was young, where I'd write 200-page refill pads. Um, but this time was quite different. I ended up writing two 90,000-word novels. One was a YA and one was an adult sci-fi. Um, and then I just put them away. Like I just put them on the desk and continued on with my business. And it was so cathartic for me. It was just by the time I finished them, I'd kind of processed all my emotions through my words. And in the end, it was just a deep breath. And I was like, I really needed that. But it kept twirling around in my mind. And then the following year, I fell pregnant. And I just said to my husband, I can't continue this business. It's too full on. I think I want to become a writer. And he, bless him, he's so amazingly supportive. He was just like, okay. It was pretty much just that word. Okay.
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
with a slight pitch in it. But
A little twitch in his eye, like.
Yeah. And so I went through the process of selling my business. And then by the time I had my first child, I was rewriting the YA novel into a middle grade because I had felt that the YA wasn't quite the right space for it. Uh, and then I injured myself and I was bedridden for about 6 weeks with a broken toe and my a lower lumbar disc bulge that was quite severe. Um, and my daughter was only 7 weeks old, so we had
Oh my gosh.
family support. Yeah, it was just horrendous. So we had family support coming in, and I think the moment I started to feel like it was overwhelming me, I basically just wrote. So I was just writing on my phone. Um, Fast forward a few years, and I'd done a few courses through the Australian Writers Centre. Um, and I had my son, and then he was born with what's called laryngomalacia, which is a floppy larynx, basically. So every time I tried to lay him down to go to sleep, he would just get really, really upset, and then when he was sick, he would start to turn blue. So I basically spent the entire first year with him upright in my arms, so he could breathe properly, and I just adapted like. I just wrote through it and I kept myself awake all night because it was, you've got your baby and you're scared of that whole bed sharing side of things. And so I just made it safe and I wrote and that kept me awake. Um, and from there, I did a few more courses. And I think the most pivotal part was forming a community. I was in the duck pond and I was in the midst of motherhood. And this was just before I had my son. And basically, I just put it out there. Are there any mums who would like to do critiques who don't want any pressure? Because it's hard enough as it is. And I said, basically, if you want to have a critique, you just put your hand up. And if you can help, you'll say yes. And it was so low key. And there was about 10 or 11 of us, I think, to begin with. And it was just the most beautiful coming together of like-minded people in the same situation, um, feeling quite lonely prior to that moment because we didn't really have our people. And from there it just grew. And now it's just a beautiful small group of people and we cheer each other on and it's just amazing. And so I am very terrible at submitting. I would write a novel, I'd submit it once or get it assessed. CYA was a huge part of that. Kidlit Vic, I did all the things. I invested in an editor. I did it. I used beta readers, professional beta readers, and then I would submit it. I'd get a rejection, and then I'm like, "Grr," and revenge write another novel. So
Love that.
I think it was Stephen King who said something along the lines of, but also many people before him. It takes the first 1 million words you basically throw away. And I love to just say that I tweak that slightly by saying it for me personally, it took 1 million words to really understand and find my own voice. And now I get it. It's like a light bulb. Once I understood voice completely, I was just like, I've got it now. And um, I was starting to go down the illustration path and get distracted by that. And then I realized, no, I need to focus on my writing. That's my heart. That's um, my sanity when all the world around me is just going crazy. Kids are screaming mum every 5 seconds. Um, so I use writing as a form of therapy. And so I realized at that moment, no, I need to focus on the words. I'm getting distracted, and middle grade is my voice. Um, and then I wrote Welcome to Miracle. Um, and I submitted it to an agent, and she was kind of half on it, but not quite. And then I had an assessment at CYA with Lorraine Fossey from Scholastic Australia. And when you speak to someone who just seems to get your writing, like I was talking with her and she was really positive about it. And I just felt that uplifting moment where, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the one. I knew there was something special about the book when I wrote it. The voice, it was just on a different level. Um, and then she asked for the full, and then 4 months passed, and I just wrote it off. So I was like, no, okay, it just didn't work. That's okay. But within that time, I just started writing a new novel. So um, at the conclusion of that 4 months, I get an email from Lorraine, and it's basically saying, uh, I loved it. We'd love to make you an offer. And honestly, like I think I've said before, I totally dropped to my knees, ugly cried on the floor. My little boy came up to me, he was like, Mummy, are you okay? And I'm like, they're happy tears. And not that I write for publication, but it was one of those moments where I was just like, this just validates all my hard work. Like, yeah, it was such a great moment. And working with Scholastic was just incredible. They're just such an amazing team. Yeah, and that's my journey.
It's an incredible story, Shara. There's so many things that I want to dip into a little bit there, but one thing that I was hoping that you could explain for listeners is the duck pond, because a lot of that's been very helpful for lots of people. But for our kidlit authors who are listening, can you explain what the duck pond is and how people can maybe get on board with that as well?
Yes, well, Jen Storer has, I think a lot of people know Jen Storer. She has been in the industry for a long time, and she's been such a huge champion of other writers. She has a few courses. And she formed a group called the Duck Pond, it was just a community to begin with. And then obviously, like, it's hard as a writer to get money. And then she made it a group where you subscribe, and I fully went along with that because I valued what she did. She brought on master classes and all that kind of thing. Sadly, it's wrapped up now. This was her final year, and I think she's left just such a huge legacy on the industry, and that's not it for her. I think she's delving into illustration, and I'm sure like she'll find a way to come back. But I think that group in particular is, because I'm a New Zealander, I don't think I've even mentioned that. I live in Auckland, New Zealand, and I didn't really find a place within the New Zealand community, or perhaps I didn't search for it. I just found myself in the Australian community, and honestly, it's just like a warm embrace. Everyone in the kidlit community over there is just so amazing, so kind, so generous, and and Jen Storer embodied that. She was the epitome of that. Yeah.
Well, we only just met in person on the weekend, didn't we, at the CYA conference?
Yes.
I know, and it's like the amount of people that said, that thought I was you and you were me.
I know.
And that we really are you sure you're not sisters? Oh, it's great. So you came over here and found your Aussie sister, and I'm so glad I found my New Zealand sister.
I know. And that was totally what it felt like. We've built these relationships online, and meeting you in person, it was just like, oh my gosh, my
Oh,
friend
no.
I haven't seen in so long. Yeah, it was so wonderful.
Yeah.
And now I've got to
Oh,
figure out a way to move to the Gold Coast.
yes, please. Well, we're here and ready for you to join us. And you can say you're an Aussie writer if you want. But no, New
Oh,
Zealand,
yes.
oh, New Zealand writers are amazing as well.
Hi everyone, I am Natalie Kyriacou and I'm the author of a new non-fiction book called Nature's Last Dance, Tales of Wonder in an Age of Extinction. It's out on August 26th and it's published by Affirm Press through Simon & Schuster. If you've ever wondered how animal genitalia is uncovering bias in evolutionary theory, or why Australia lost a war to an emu, or how the cure to cancer is in nature and maybe going extinct, well, then this book is for you. Nature's Last Dance is a fierce, funny and deeply moving odyssey into the power, politics and chaos of humanity's relationship with nature, where birds romance rocks, drug lords unleash hippos and worlds collide. This book explores the way nature shapes cultures, economies, politics and societies and defines the very fabric of human civilization. And it's told through a range of somewhat irreverent, quirky, joyful, sweet and sometimes tragic stories. Often we think of nature and assume it's a niche topic, something that we're fond of but perhaps wouldn't want to read about. This book aims to change that. It charts the romantic lives of wildlife, the rise and fall of empires, the stories of women on the front lines of crisis who are mobilising the world through their compassion, and the scandalous underbelly of the birdwatching community, which is filled with Shakespearean-level drama. Writing Nature's Last Dance was the greatest joy of my life. This book is my whole heart and my whole brain, and I hope you love it. I think it's important. Well, of course I do. I wrote it, but I hope you do too.
So all those stories just go to show how everybody's journey is different. All three of your journeys were different. My journey was different to that. But still lots of similarities. I think everyone spoke of rejections, like so you just have to keep on pushing through. And I think also like just trusting in what you're writing as well. And just, going with that and pushing forward with that. And there's one constant as well. Another one that I found between everyone is just putting your work out there and getting it seen. And no matter how you do that, and that can lead to rejections in the first place, and that's fine. But conferences, Kidlit Vic, CYA, assessments, finding agents and putting it out there. It's just the only way that you can get your work picked up, right? So any other major tips from the pros here? I'll ask each of you, can you give a tip for aspiring authors who are trying to get their work out there and trying to get it signed? And then maybe something for our debut authors, because there's, we've got a debut crew 2025. We've got another 5 months left of the year. So with people's books coming out, and everyone's always in that leader. I know we've all been there. You're so desperate to find out what's actually happening. What should I do? What are the do's and don'ts? Because everyone just wants to make the most of it. And, there's a 2026 crew now, probably a 2027 crew started as well. So, because like we just spoke about that really long lead time, right?
Yeah.
So Shara, I'll start with you. What tips have you got for our listeners?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I was asked this at SIA and ran out of time, so I had to give a couple of like throwaway, do this and that. But and this may be controversial, but there's a big thing on luck in the industry. Oh, it's just it was lucky. I have a real bugbear with that because every single one of us works so hard, and we do the work, we put ourselves in front of the right people. And I've been going for like 9 years now. And I've only just got my first deal, and then I just got my second deal. So I really want to remove the word luck from the industry. I think it's definitely a matter of timing sometimes and getting in front of the right people. But I think it's important to embrace the whole picture, which is you do the work, you put yourself in front of the right person, and you will get rejections, and it's how you handle those rejections. Do you wallow or do you just keep pushing forward? That's what I think personally. And the other thing is just to find your tribe. I think when I found my people, it just transformed everything. Suddenly you've got people to bounce your work off. You've got people to share the ups and downs with. You really truly celebrate each other's successes. Um, and I think it helps from a mental perspective, and it also helps from an encouragement perspective as well. Um, I've got a few friends shifting from picture book to long form, and they're a bit intimidated by the words. And I just keep saying, just focus on the character, focus on the heart. It's just remember why you write. Yeah. And for debuts, I think we've got such a great group this year. Everyone is so amazing, and all the books are so incredible and incredibly different. It's just such a joy to see them all coming out and celebrating each other's successes. I just think remember why you write. Like just remember why you write throughout the entire process. Always. Yeah, that would be mine.
Yeah, they're really good tips. And I agree with you about the luck thing. Yeah, I think that term gets confused with right author, right publisher, right time. You know,
Yes.
yeah, don't you agree? Like and maybe that's lucky that you happen to, like I say with my conversations with Lisa when I first met her talking about a YA novel. It wasn't maybe luck, but we could have hung up the phone at a particular point in time, but we didn't. I kept, chatting, and I kept pushing her to keep chatting. I've got Lisa Berryman on the phone. Keep going. Don't let her go. And maybe that's just a decision that you make. Maybe it's luck. I don't know, but it's. I don't think I would have probably signed with her in the end had I not gone on and had that conversation that turned into a lot more. Yeah,
But
it's
also
still
you've got to
work.
be the right person that she gels with,
But
right?
that's right.
Yeah, it's a connection thing. And if you connect, you talk longer. Yeah, I think,
Connection.
yeah.
We spoke about that a lot. There was a lot about that at CYA conference that was on the weekend, and we had a really big success panel, and I think there was like 13 successes from this year. So, and everybody in a different way spoke of connection, even if they didn't say the words connection. There was some kind of connection happening in their journey to success through CYA. So that's really important. Okay, Lucie, what are your top tips for aspiring authors and debut authors?
So I think for aspiring authors, one of the most important things is to commit to an attitude of continuous learning, I think. So I do a lot of manuscript assessments as part of my professional work, and I do have quite a lot of repeat clients. And what I often see is that there hasn't been a lot of kind of learning happening between one manuscript and the next manuscript. And I think that sometimes this can actually really hold people back. So people who've got a lot of potential, but maybe haven't sort of realized that they've still got quite a lot to learn. And I know from my own experience too, when I look back at that very first novel that did end up getting rejected, I can now see why, like despite the fact that I had won development awards and I had secured an agent, I can really see why that novel didn't get published. And in some respects, I'm kind of glad that it didn't now, I mean, of course, I would have had the benefit of working with an editor to improve it. And there were some things that I just wasn't capable of fixing. I was trying to write something that I didn't have the skills to write, essentially. But I think it's really important to remember that you don't just kind of become a writer. And even the act of writing, while it's extremely important, it needs to come in tandem with a lot of learning as well. And that means becoming really familiar with the conventions of the genre that you're trying to write, paying attention to the books that are being published and learning from them by reading them closely, joining your local groups that are available in your area or online to learn from the people around you as well. So I just think it's really important to remember that it's not just something that magically happens, that you actually have to work really hard to learn the skill and to master it as well, to master the craft. So I know I wasted a lot of time in my younger years not really understanding genre conventions properly. And I look back and I can see how I was so captivated by just the joy of writing, which obviously is really, really important as well, but going on tangents that really didn't serve the narrative, and sort of getting very captivated by the process instead of thinking a little bit more strategically about it. So I could have saved myself a lot of time if someone had given me the advice that I'm sort of putting out there now, I suppose. In theory, who knows? But and I think, like Shara said, for people with their first novels coming out in the near future, one of the best things I did actually was join my local CBCA community. They are such a wonderful group. I am so humbled by their generosity and support. I've made some great friends who have been amazing mentors to me as well. So it's been so wonderful to be part of that community. And I think, yeah, it's great too, because it's not just writers, you're also, or illustrators, you're connecting with booksellers and librarians and teacher librarians. So it's really a wealth of knowledge and experience. So I highly recommend people get involved in their local CBCA community.
Yeah. No, very important. The community, it comes up every time, doesn't it? Finding a tribe,
Yep.
like Shara said as well. Absolutely. I really love what you say about conventions with writing, though, because everybody who listens to the podcast knows that I sort of say that I plot, but again, like I write. I'm probably like you, Lucy. I'm a little bit of both, and I'm probably a lot of planning, but I do that sorry, afterwards as like a check. Like I love that editing process, and I love just checking to
Yep.
make sure that everything sort of hits the mark before I go any further with it. And a lot of people, they're not even aware that there's particular conventions in some of these genres, and that is something that you can find out, and it all makes sense when you read it. You're like, and you think about the stories that you've read in that genre. When you look at those conventions, it just makes sense. And you think about a book that you've read recently and you go, oh yeah, I see that point, and I see that where that happened, and I see where that happened, and I see where that happened. And then you start to realize it's in all those well-written books that you've read. And it's not, I think, people get a bit scared of losing that magic of writing and just freely having it right. And some people can just do it automatically, and that comes out, and they're very privileged to be able to just innately know where things go and when and why. But it's such an important tool to go back to, even if it's just a check, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, to be honest, when I wrote the first draft of R.I.P. Nanny Tobbins, I have to say that, and this was a highly unusual experience for me, that in the first instance, at least from a structural point of view, there was still a lot of work and development that had to happen, but all of those sort of conventions, all of the mandatory scenes just happened to be there in the right place at the right time. And I almost couldn't believe it. It was like, and I kept thinking, it's Sarah Centillas. She somehow infused me with this amazing magic that she possesses. But actually, I think what it was all of those years of learning sitting so hardwired in my subconscious that when I sat down to write, it felt very intuitive about when I needed to turn a scene and when I needed to build to a climax. And when I needed a moment of sort of like deep emotional resonance happening. So I really feel like the learning of the conventions is the structure, and then all of the magic and intuitive stuff happens around that. And it's almost like it's there to support you. All that learning is there to support you, and it actually frees you in the moment when you're sitting down to write, because you're not having to think so much about it. It's sitting there already present. So that's why I'm just such a big, as you can tell, advocate for like learning. Just keep learning, and then eventually it kind of all organically comes together, hopefully.
Yeah, and reading too, right? If you read a lot,
yes.
that's it. Just is that format and that flow. It just sort of sits there as well, because you've just innately learnt it, and so you know how it flows because you know what you've read, and you just can write from what you've learned.
Yeah, it's like the rhythm of it sits there with you, and you get a feel for how it needs to move.
Yep, no, absolutely. Such good advice. And Sandy, what have you got for us?
Yeah, look, I'd strongly agree with Lucie's advice about learning and your words about reading, and especially reading in your chosen genre. So for me, I made sure I read a lot of verse novels just to get that idea of rhythm and the flow and the lyrical language. I also read poetry. And then I also think it's important to read outside of your chosen genre as well, just to, that can give you fresh ideas and ways of writing that you can incorporate into your own writing. And I think it's just really important, like Lucie said, to hone your craft. And you can do that by attending workshops, attending conferences. You can do writing courses online. There's so many wonderful choices. You don't even have to leave your house if you don't want to. You could do it in your own time. So I think it's important to embrace all those learning opportunities. Like we've also said, find your tribe, find your people. This might be slightly controversial, but I would say, okay, I love social media. It's not for everyone. It can be a real time waster, and there's a lot of advice about sort of not being on social media or kind of limiting your time on it. But for me, when I joined that Bookstagram community, that's where I made my connections, which of course you can do in person as well through your CBCA groups. But, sometimes some people find it actually quite intimidating to turn up to these groups in person, especially when you don't know anyone and you feel like a bit of an imposter, it's that whole imposter syndrome, like I'm not really an author. But, I think for some, social media is a way to connect with people without having to meet face-to-face initially if you don't feel comfortable to do that. So you can, foster your own sort of communities that way as well, and get to know people, that's how I've met so many people who I feel like are my friends. We may not have met in real life, but you feel like you have, and you have this whole supportive community around you. I would say try not to spend all your time on social media. You have to actually do the writing as well, of course. So it's just about whatever works for you and your personality. So basically read a lot, lots of workshops, find your people.
Yeah, very important. Again, finding tribe and community, right? And whether that's online or in person, it's all very important. And the social media thing at CYA on the weekend during the publishers and agents panel, that was brought up. I think it's brought up every year about whether someone needs to be on social media. And I think it was kind of categorically, well, look, it's definitely going to help you, and not through the way that some people think, like who aren't on social media or are really scared of it. Like it's another way to contact you, a really easy way to contact you and to put your work out there as well. And, the advice given was, if you're scared of it or you just don't like posting about yourself, then just kind of, what do you like doing? Do you like cats and do you like reading? Cool. Post your book that you're reading at the moment and post funny things that your cat does, or just a picture of your cat or a book and the cat together, just, is it food? Do you love food? Post food, just whatever, kind of just throw some stuff on there. And they did say it does show that you're willing to, promote a little bit, because, we've spoken about it a lot on the podcast. You do have to do some promotion yourself of your book when it is published. So it just kind of shows that you're serious about it, I think was the words that were used, that you're professional, you're serious about it, because it is like kind of like getting starting a business, isn't it? You need a way for people to contact you and see what you've got on offer. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, ladies. Well, it has been incredible chatting to you all, and I don't want to leave. I have so many other questions. I write when you all speak, and I put these little stars, ask more about that. But honestly, we could be here for 3 hours chatting about all the things that I've written down. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 to it. But so thank you so much for coming on the Book Deal podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
It's been great.
It has. Lots of fun.
Good luck with your second books.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I need it.
You do not.
Good luck with your third, Tina.
Yes, Tina.
Thanks.
Amazing.
Thank you for listening to the Book Deal podcast. We're able to bring you these weekly writerly chats because of our amazing patrons. Join the TPD family by becoming a member of our Patreon community at patreon.com the Book Deal Podcast. And if you love the pod, please give us a rating or review. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook.